the first thing we're going to do is pray in, okay? We have to ask God to be with us and pray with us and be with us. So who would like to pray us in?
I'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
Dear Heavenly Father, we welcome you into this session. We're going to learn more about our history that's been robbed from us, our heritage. We're just blessed to have the opportunity to have someone to speak to us and to give us some knowledge that we so desperately need. We ask that you continue to bless this organization and bless the brothers and the people on this call. These blessings we ask in your name.
Amen.
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 Amen, Brother Harold.
Amen.
I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody, okay? Just so we can be clear here. All right, so everybody's muted except me, of course, but I want to thank everybody for being here today. This is Brother to Brother. Brother to Brother is a 501c3 organization. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been in business for 20 years, and it's an absolute pleasure for us to be here today. Brother to Brother has several different activities, of which one is a Bible study. That's our main activity. And obviously COVID-19 has stopped us from being in the room, in the garage, as we say. So as a result, some of the brothers got together, and we put this now on Zoom. So on Tuesdays, we have Bible study on Zoom, and we normally have somewhere around 60, 70 brothers on Zoom studying the Bible. We leave our title and denomination at the door. There's every religion in this room. All religions are here. And we leave it at the door, and we come in as brothers, and we share our strength, our hope, our spirit. And the only requirement is that you love one another and you love our brother, your fellow brother. So that's it. That's what Brother to Brother is about. This today is our speaker series that we have. And it's an absolute pleasure. I'm going to share my screen now. And you guys see that okay? All right. I'm going to share my screen now. So our speaker series now is in its third week, and we absolutely have a wonderful gentleman, Professor Manu Ampim, available to lecture us on Black people in the biblical lands of Kush and Egypt and their contributions to the world. So this is our 6-week series. We're now on week 3. Week 3 today is social and organization, and that's going to be our focus for today. And just to give you a little background on our Professor Manu Ampim, I'm going to read right here this paragraph. So Manu Ampim is the director of advancing the research and is a noted historian and scholar specializing in Africana Studies. He has conducted primary research in nearly 24 countries over the past 30 years, and is an author of numerous scholarly articles and several books, including his latest work, A History of African Civilizations, 2019. Professor Ampim is also a tenured professor at Contra Costa College and a chair of the History, Anthropology, and Geographical Department, Geography Department. In addition, he has facilitated various workshops throughout North America and has worked with several renowned scholars. So it's a pleasure for us to have him here with us. And as we say, we're at week 3. So next week, from 6 to 7:30, we'll have week 4, and he'll concentrate on medicine. Me being an engineer, I can't wait till I hear week 5 on mathematics, and then week 6 on architecture. All of this plays beautifully with our Bible study, especially obviously the Old Testament, and helping us understand what we're reading and where this all came from. Brother to brother, Psalms 133 says, "How wonderful and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." And with that, I'd like to introduce Professor Manu Ampim. Manu, you got the floor.
You all this evening, brothers and sisters, and it's been a pleasure to be able to share with you the fruits of some of my ongoing research. And I think the first presentation I gave to the brothers was a little bit over a month ago, and that went well, and we decided to do the 6-week seminar that we're doing now. So I've enjoyed a good relationship with you all. And today, it's social organization. I should have probably added a few more words. It's social organization and also female rulers. So I want to keep the good relationship with the brothers, but let's talk about ancient African social organization, because we've taught the world what positive relationships are about. Whereas other groups have struggled between male, female, and young and old, we've had harmonious relationships in traditional African culture and civilization. And my work, these relationships, harmonious way to build, maintain, and extend high-level classical African civilization. So my work has been to look at these relationships. So today, that's what we really, that's what I want to share with you. So that's the brief, and I'm just going to show slides from maybe 40 minutes at the most, and then we'll spend the balance of the time, as we've done the first 2 weeks, with questions and dialogue. I'm going to share my screen, and whenever this comes up. All right, so as Brother Ronald mentioned, so the overall seminar is Black People in the Biblical Lands of Kush and Egypt. And Kush is the original name. The original name of Egypt, as we've discussed, is actually KEMET, but people obviously know it more as Egypt, which is really a Greek corruption of the name for a temple. So anyway, we've looking at these contributions, and I had indicated last week that much I'm presenting from my latest book, The History of African Civilization, that I actually used as a book in my class at Contra Costa College, but also, as you know, it's available to the public as well. So these are just some segments of these tremendous contributions that have laid a great foundation for the world. The world has been built on Black contributions that are put in place to last for eternity. And so we have to go back to them. So we finished seminar 1, seminar 2 last week, Writing and Ethical Values. We talked about the book of Het-Heru as a resource that you could also purchase. And we looked at all of the great wisdom texts from this large body of literature. And it's so and also female rulers, because this is unusual to see female rulership in general, but definitely in antiquity. It's not common for people to know about this, because if we look at it from a Western lens, women have had no rights. They had no rights in early America, no rights in early Europe, and people think that that's the universal experience. It is actually not the universal experience. African women have had a high status when we look at the early societies, the egalitarian societies, the small stature people. We don't call them pygmy because that's a negative reference, but they're small stature, averaging maybe 4'8", 4'10". Those are the small stature people that taught us what it meant to be human and created these egalitarian societies. In other words, societies without rank, societies without any kind of hierarchy. They were literally harmonious cultures. And from that, in the Eastern African region, there were It was that foundation of social relations, of harmony between men and women. But then to that, the high level civilizations were able to build on that tradition of societies based on sharing and caring. So that's really the basis of what I want to present to you today. And as you already know, I know some might be joining us for the first time today, but we're talking about Northeast Africa. This is the region. So this is the Nile Valley, and this Nile Valley is a huge region that actually encompasses about 9 countries today. And the Nile is the longest river in the world. So our area of Kush and Kemet, or you know it as Egypt, or many know as Egypt, that's the area that we're talking about these high-level contributions. And so, sorry. All right, so we discussed last week that the foundation of the moral system, the ethical system that the books of wise instructions were based on is the principle of Maat, the elevated notion of moral perfection. And this is an image of Maat. She's presented as a female. And so Maat, you see her, this is the image of Maat here, as you can see. This also, the smaller image is also Maat. And the way you would know who this is, you may just see this as a seated person. It's always the feather. This is the ostrich feather. This is also feather. It's the symbol of that high level, this notion of balance and harmony, or moral perfection and so forth. So when you see Maat as the goddess or the feather, it's representing the highest law in the land. And so, and we talked about the 42 declarations of innocence, which is the oldest surviving moral code in the world. There's nothing older than this comprehensive ethical and moral set of values. And so we discussed that last week. And Maat represents all of these important aspects of harmony and balance, truth, justice, right order, or divine law in short. So this is not just a concept, it's what people actually practice. And that's what I want to demonstrate today. We also showed last week that even kings, rulers, chiefs, no matter who they were bound by Maat. It's Maat that governs not only social relations, Maat, what keeps the planets in their orbit. It's Maat that is responsible for the alternation of the idea of balance and harmony in this context. But here you see in one scene, Seti I is being given his crown of installment, and then the scene pans from right to left. And in the next scene, as he receives his crown, he is vowing to rule according to what? To the law. And that's Ma'at that he has in his hand. And last week, a couple the questions came up about the opposite of Ma'at. And here is Ma'at here. She's the largest figure. Notice that this is the representation of the ostrich feather, which represents the law. And she actually is taking prisoners. These are foreigners. These are foreigners who are being taken to justice. They're not people in the society. These are foreigners who came up against the people in Kemet or Egypt. And what you have here for each one of these images are a figure. They're a figure of a chieftain, of a high-ranking foreigner who was on his knees with his hands behind his back. And they're all named here. This is the name of each foreigner. And these are chiefs. These are high-level people. So in other words, what Ma'at is doing is bringing all these different people to justice. And so this is the fundamental symbol to show that a group has been subdued. When they are, you can't really see it, but they're on their knees, hands tied behind their back, and they're being subjugated. They're not being enslaved. They're just being subdued because they've come up against the nation. And if you recall last week, anybody recall what we said was the opposite of Ma'at? It's the term that represents chaos and disorder. Anyone remember that? Well, it's the term Isfet. That's the opposite. It's disorder, it's chaos, it's evil, if you want to put it that way. But so these people, she's bringing all these prisoners to justice. And so let's take a look at the status of women in the society, because we can see that there were male kings and pharaohs and rulers. But as I mentioned last week, the men were the symbol of authority, but the source of that authority were the women. Now here's a large temple in a place called Dendera. And to give you an idea of the size of this temple, this is a person, a man on top. to give you an idea of the size. You know what's amazing about this temple is that you can see people on the ground level, but do you know that beneath this temple is a more ancient temple, literally. So when I take people that archaeologists removed from the floor to indicate the columns of the earlier temple. So this is one of the most ancient temples that here is rebuilt on top of the earlier one. But I want to show you the chapel of the New Year inside of the Dendera temple. It's a large temple with various chapels and chambers. But as you walk up the stairs here into this chapel, on the ceiling is none other than the goddess Nut. She represents the sky. She represents heaven. And she's giving birth to the most powerful element in the universe, the sun. So if you're trying to make this out, all right, this is her head here. You see the head. This is her ear, eyes. This would be her mouth. Is the sun. And then you notice that these are her arms, and then this is the body of Maat, her breast, stomach. These are her legs, and her dress ends here, and then the feet. So what you're looking at is Nut, who's swinging the sun. Now, it's not depicted here, but in some other paintings, you see it more very clearly, and that is she's swallowing the sun. And so throughout the night hour, the sun is traveling through her body. So obviously it is dark in the world as the sun is in the body of Nut. And then here she's giving birth to the elements. Ooh-wee. That's a whole lot of high status there. She's actually giving birth to the sun, and you see the sun rays that's energizing the planet. I mean, this is a tremendous tribute. So it's Nut that governs the sky as a high level tribute. And I want to just point out these kind of positions of high status because it's not far-fetched in any kind of way, but it's in the context of high status of women to show female rulership. Now here's the goddess Seshat, the deity of writing. She was the one over the library. And so she's the deity of writing. And yet you will hear or read mainstream Egyptologists who misrepresent the obvious facts. And they say that, well, women didn't know how to write. They weren't taught and educated. What? What do you mean? The whole goddess, Seshet. Seshet is the goddess or the deity of writing in the library. And so there's a whole tradition of female writers and female scribes. And they were on tutelage of Seshet. She's the female version of, and here's another image of Seshet wall. And here it is. She has on her, this is 7 petals. This is one of the distinguishing features of Seshet. So it's like, well, Professor, I don't really know how to distinguish one goddess or god from another. You usually look at the headdress and it will tell you who it is. So what she's holding in both hands is the a palm branch. And so these palm branches are actually knotted, representing many, many years. And here's a symbol here for, I think, 1,000,000 years. So she's the one in charge of the library and the annals of time. A very, very high status for Seshet, Seshet. And here is another image of her, a better image. This is on the side of one of the statues. And you see the 7-petal flower here. And you see her, she has a reed brush in her hand. She is what? Count the time. She's the one over time, the celestial. And so very significant role assigned to Seshet, the female deity of writing, to accompany Jehuti or Thoth, the deity of writing and wisdom. And so this is his counterpart. And by the way, there's always balance. There's no such thing as a male deity without a female deity. There's balance. And here it is. You see the female version. And one thing I want to point out as well is that we know so much about the day-to-day life going back thousands of years in classical Africa because of places like this, Deir, Medina. This is the town. And what you're actually looking at is the town's old wall. And these were the people responsible for building on the other side of the hill, building the tombs of the kings in the Valley of the Kings. They would walk over the mountain and build. And what you're actually looking at are parts of the houses. This is rooms of actual houses. And this is a street in the middle. But what's important about Deir el-Medina, they call Deir el-Medina the place of truth, or Set Maat, the place of truth, or the location of truth, the location of justice. That's what they called the town. And it's important to look at this because there's been 70 letters found in Deir el-Medina, 70 letters written by women and to women. And those letters indicate the women's status, that they were able to obviously marry, divorce, take case to court, own property. In fact, if you look at the letters and all of the written material, you can't tell male from female. It's the same law for everybody. The only way you can tell that a female is involved from the letters found in this town is by the name, or if they make a reference to he or she. But in terms of looking at cases, there's no way to determine if it's a male or female. And so the women had important status. Now, what Egyptologists do, this is looking inside of a home. These are different rooms in homes. You can actually go and see it today. This is how it looks. So most times the homes would be 2 rooms or maybe 3 rooms. And many of them actually had stairs, as you can see here, just stairs inside of the home leading to an altar. There was altar thing in the homes where there were altars. There would always be an image of a male ancestor. These would be altars for ancestors. Now, somebody might say, wait a minute, this idea about graven image. But look, let's be clear. Many of us in our homes, we have what? We have pictures of passed on, and we'll have a number of or things they like to drink. But we have, whether it's official or unofficial, we typically have altars even in our own house to remember those that have gone on, who passed on before us. And they have that clearly in, now what we're looking at is KEMET. This is KEMET, or classical African civilization of KEMET, or so-called Egypt. And they had high level respect for the ancestors. And it would be usually an altar up those stairs. Here's a model. This is a small model for a house. Interesting because obviously it was different levels. Your houses of different level houses, and gives you an idea of how some of the houses were. And now, one thing I want to point out about the women and Deir el-Medina, just really quickly, is that here's why most people don't know that women were writers and wrote letters on a regular basis, is because people in the US and many of the Western Egyptologists, they say that, yeah, that's probably because, that the woman wanted to give a message, but she could only dictate the letter and somebody had to write it for her. Well, why would somebody be writing a letter to a woman if they could not read and write, as mainstream Egyptologists would like to tell us? Well, yeah, someone may have wrote them a letter, but someone else had to read it to them. Come on, that's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. But what about Seshet, the female deity writing? Well, that can just be symbolic. What? And then, well, what about the woman who calls herself a female scribe? Well, we need more examples. No, you don't need more examples. Yeah, deal with that example. But what about the female writers who indicate in the images, literally the paintings, where they are seated with their husband and underneath their chair is scribal equipment for writing? And they said, well, yeah, you might find scribal equipment for writing, which clearly indicates their profession, but that's probably done because there wasn't room for the artist to put the scribal equipment over evidence in order to reach a conclusion that doesn't make sense. But what about the woman who is not seated with her husband? She's seated by herself in a painting with the scribal equipment under her chair, indicating her position as a writer. Well, convention had, this is their argument, convention had set in. So the writer probably, or artist, put the scribal equipment under her chair because it was just done through tradition.
Hey,
So,
Manu, excuse me, Manu. Get a little closer to your your bandwidth. You're going in and out a little bit sometimes, and I think it's when you get a little bit away from your computer itself. So it's all about bandwidth. So I'm not sure why, but go ahead, continue. But get a little closer to your computer because it's going in and out sometimes.
Okay, am I being heard okay now?
Yes.
Ron? Okay, all right. So anyway, I was just saying that there's a number of different arguments that people make to try to reach a conclusion that people in Kemet or Egypt didn't write, particularly women. Makes no sense because of 70 letters in Deir, but people reach conclusions with no evidence. That's why, as a researcher, I always say that documentation beats conversation every day of the week. So Deir Medina is definitive evidence of day-to-day activity of women actually being able to write. And now also there's PE-SESHET, who's the director of female doctors. We'll talk about this next week in detail, but this is an image of her here. And so she is the director of female doctors. There was a whole tradition of physicians, a whole cadre of physicians, and she was the director. And you might recall that I've said last week, I believe, that, yeah, I did, in regards to Hatshepsut, who wrote the first book, that nobody can hold high office unless what? Unless they were first a priest or a priestess. So she was also the director of female priestesses as well. But anyway, notice the high status. There's no limitations in rank of women in the society, whether it's the deity of writing or the director of female doctors. So there was high status all the way around. And if we take a look at the goddess Aset, or you may know her more commonly as Isis, she's actually the first female ruler. And it's like as above, so below. So this is part of the very first trinity in the world. So you have her husband Asar, Aset, and the son is Heru. Now the Greeks could not pronounce any of the names. So Asar, Aset, and their son Heru, the first trinity, is changed to Osiris, Isis, and Horus. So Asar is the first ruler. And when Asar leaves, when he leaves Africa and goes to other places to bring civilization, according to the mythology, when he leaves the throne to none other than his wife. In his absence, his wife rules the nation. Here, what you see here, this is the bottom of a golden coffin. And what you see are the wings. These are the wings of Aset, or so-called Isis. She's kneeling down. This is her knees. This is her feet. And this is one of her knees here. Anyway, she's kind of kneeling down, and she's on an image representing gold. But what's important about this image is not just the beauty. What's important about this image is on her head is a throne. So the name Aset, literally, the literal translation of the name Aset is throne, or to rule, literally to rule or throne. So that's why I don't typically use foreign names to represent African places and people and deities, because we lose the understanding. So if we call it Isis, it doesn't mean anything. That's the Greek word. The original name Aset, that's what this symbol is. This throne is literally translated as, it's Aset, and it means the throne. So her name means to rule. And so she represents the tradition of female rulership as a goddess. So it's not a stretch. In fact, it's consistent to have a goddess rule, so that in real life, you have queens that also rule. And and notice one of the other deities, Het-Heru, or so-called Hathor, notice the beautiful jewelry, and she is also sitting on here. And we notice this Het-Heru, or house of Heru. This is the son of Aset. That's what her name means, the house of Heru. She's the one that protected the son Heru when Aset left. When Aset was was governing the nation when her husband left. Anyway, look at the beautiful jewelry, and she is sitting on the throne with the horns of a cow and a sun disk, and this is a symbol of the Ankh, meaning life. So let's take a look at these 5 female rulers that ruled the nation of all of Kemet, the entire nation. They were not rogue rulers or rogue leaders. They were not ruling only in isolated places. These were legitimate female rulers, and there are 5 of them that are documented. Now, the one that we hear about sometimes is number 4, and that is, and you might say, well, how do you pronounce her name? Well, most of the names are, you have to break it up into 2 or 3 syllables. So it's actually easy to pronounce Hatshepsut. Notice the first 3 letters is Het-Shep-Sut. So Hatshepsut is her name. Now, the reason why she's known and the 4 are not known is because she left powerful and enduring monument nobody can put a sheet over and cover up. And so there's no way to dismiss or hide her massive statues and monuments, temples. And so the people who have no respect for female rulers, they only talk about Hatshepsut, and then they try to make it seem as though she took an unprecedented step to rule. What do you mean unprecedented? She's following in the tradition of not only Aset, but all of the other female rulers before her. Just a brief FYI, that I have dates here, and these are just general dates. I don't necessarily subscribe by these and will fight somebody to say these are the actual dates, but they're approximate dates, just to give you a general idea of when these female rulers came to power. And notice the different dynasties that they came to power. And these dynasties are all important because a dynasty is a family of rulers. So when the ruling family was in decline and that ruling family was no longer in charge, or there was chaos about who would be in line next to rule, it is always the female who steps up to stabilize the throne, because the throne is passed from the queen or queen mother to daughter. And that's how they kept the throne. The rulership within the family is traced through the female line. So let's take a look at these female rulers, and then we'll open it up for dialogue. So the first is Mer-neith, then there's Nefertiti. She's more commonly known by the Greek term of Nicotrus. Then there's Sobek-neferu, Hatshepsut, and Tawozret. So let's take a look at these female rulers. And of course, the question is, why were there female rulers? When most were males, why were there female rulers? 2 reasons, or 2 scenarios. Number 1, when the king died and the son was too young to rule, then it would be the female, the queen, who would step up to stabilize the throne. That's one reason you have these female rulers. And then the second reason, if the king died and there was no male heirs. So if the son was too young or no male heirs, that's why you have female rulership. And it's not unique to Egypt or Kemet. You find it throughout the region where you have high-level female rulership. And so this is important to know. So let's take a look at this group of female rulers. Now, the first is Mer-neith, and this is a burial area of the 1st and 2nd dynasty tombs. And it's a place called el-Gab. That's an Arabic name for the location. El-Gab, it translates to mean mother of pots, because there's a lot of pot fragments everywhere, a lot of pottery. I mean, you go there and it's just pot fragments everywhere, which means it was a richly occupied area. So these are tombs that have been mapped, and these are tombs that go back to the very foundation of the nation, dynasties 1 and 2, when Kemet was established as a nation. So Mer-neith is the first female ruler, and this is a close-up of her tomb. So what you have are 41 burials, 41 burials around tomb here, and then around these 41 burials, there are 8 chambers, and in the middle, she would have been buried. And now, why did Mer-neith? What was the justification for her to rule? You might ask. Well, if you take a look at the map here, her father Djer indicates her royal descent. This is all of the massive tomb area of Djer, and then her husband Djet, when he passes away, then Mer-neith becomes the first female ruler because her son, Din, was too young to rule. So why is Mer-neith's tomb in the area where there's nothing but kings? Because she is a legitimate female ruler. She's anything outside of tradition. And so this is not normally mentioned because it upsets the ideas that people have, thinking women never had any status. Well, that's not, we're not talking about Africa. You want to talk about Greek and Roman culture? Okay, go right ahead. But we're not talking about classical Africa if we look at the status of women, and the evidence is clear about that. And let's face it, just to give you a brief reference, you know, we hear that the origins of the term democracy, the word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos and krasi. So demos means people, and krasi or kratic means to rule. So democracy literally means the rule of the people. And if you look at Greece, what people? People often say that the first democracy was developed in Athens, Greece in the 5th century BCE. That's impossible. First of all, 90% of the people in Greece had no rights, couldn't hold office, couldn't vote, had no political rights. How in the world could Greek culture be a so-called democracy? And among those groups that had no rights were women. So here we're looking at a completely different tradition of women and female leadership. So here's her father, Djer. And by the way, I might have mentioned it in passing before, but when you see a falcon like here perched on top of a rectangular building, the falcon always represents the king. Falcon is equivalent to kingship. Falcons soar high above. When you see a falcon, it's a symbol of kingship, and the falcon is on top of the image of a palace. And this is always the name of the king here. So whenever you see a bird, a falcon perched on top of a rectangular symbol, it's the king sitting on top of his palace. And that's what you see here. So anyway, that's her father, Djer, her husband, Djet. Notice again, you have the falcon on top of a rectangular symbol. This is his name here, and notice the same thing. So this is a symbol of kingship. And then this is the vast tomb of Djet. And then you have Mer-neith. Now this is part of her monuments that survived, and this literally spells her name. And what is this, you might ask? This is the origin of the modern tombstone. Take a look at the modern tombstones, has a person's name, and sometimes, then this is early on, but later in addition, person's name, their image, and also out of Neith, or beloved of Neith, or loved by Neith, is really what her name translates to mean. And this is her tomb. And this is her son's tomb, Din. So this is the actual photograph at El Gab, the area. You have to actually get special permission to go out to that area, but it's well worth it if someone's a researcher to go to the early tomb areas. And this is her son, Din, and these are all supposed to be burials here around his central tomb. And that's what you're looking at on the right. And so her son was too young to rule, but as he grows up later, this is an image of Din, the son, who's now old enough. Notice he has on his crown with the uraeus, the cobra. He has a mace in his hand. The mace is a fundamental symbol to knock an enemy over the head. So these are the foreigners, and the text says smiting, is smiting of someone from the east, or smiting a foreigner, and that's what you have here. So the foreigners are always in postures of humiliation and subjugation. You come against the people, there's a price to pay. And they're not going to extend their land. They're not imperialists. No, there's people coming against them. And so notice, again, you have the falcon on top of the rectangular symbol, and this is his name, Din. So this is how we know who it is. So he later becomes of age after his mother stabilizes the throne. But the first female ruler is Mer-neith. This is the very first dynasty. Now the second documented female ruler is Kurti, the mentioned order in the cultures. And what happens during this era is very interesting, why Nefertiti had to become a female ruler. And this is documented here in different papyruses, or papyri, plural. the Papyrus of Turin, and it's called by that name because it's in Turin, Italy, you know, and she is mentioned, Nefertiti is mentioned as a ruling king or ruling her rule. Manetho, the historian of ancient Kemet, he lists her in his list of dynastic rulers, and also she's mentioned by Greek writers. It's a whole list of royal rulers, legitimate kings. And at the end of the 6th dynasty, the end of the Pyramid Age, you have Nefertiti. So when it was brought to Turin, of course, they destroyed this papyrus. And as you know from last week, from papyrus, we get the word paper. But it's just fragments now, you know, a lot of these important documents. But nevertheless, they mention Nefertiti. So what happens, the reason why she has to stabilize the throne is because she ruled after Pepi II. Now, Pepi II, can you believe it, ruled for 94 years. So he was about the age of 6 or so when he reaches, when he is ruling, and he ruled for 94 years. And he outlived all of his male heirs. There were no male heirs left. So Pepi outlived everybody. And so Nefertiti had to step up and stabilize the throne because Pepi had outlived all of the heirs. And so that's why she stepped up. Now, when she becomes ruler at the end of the Pyramid Age, she does not bring about the end of the age. She's trying to stabilize the throne so there's not chaos. And this is an image of Pepi and his mother. Notice that he is on her lap. Let me see if I can give you a close-up of this. Here it is, the crown. As you can see here, he's being supported by who? By Mom. By his mother. Notice the hand of support here. And so Pepi II, his mother's name is Ankh-Ines Pepi. And so that's her name. She's on the throne and she's supporting her young son so that he could step up and stabilize the throne. I mean, well, she stabilized the throne and I'm sorry, other way around. This is Pepi's mother. Pepi outlived everybody. Because he outlived everybody, and this is him when he's very young before he rules for 94 years. And then what has to happen is that Nefertiti has to stabilize the throne, and she comes in as the second female ruler because Pepi outlived everybody of male heirs. And then after she rules after Pepi, then the Pyramid Age ends. This great period of almost 1,000 years of building massive pyramids and ends, and then there's a period of chaos. Nefertiti does not bring the chaos, she's trying to prevent it. What do I mean by chaos? Unstable government, unstable leadership, and no more centralized rulership, no more building great monuments, no more pyramid building, no more high-level art. None of that takes place anymore because now you have foreigners who come in to destabilize the entire country. And that's what Nefertiti tried to stave off, but it wasn't really successful. So then there's several dynasties, dynasty 7, 8, 9, and 10, where there's just widespread chaos happening and warfare in the country with foreigners coming in. And then finally, a new era comes in. Now, the next important female ruler is Sobek-neferu. She's the third ruler at the end of the 12th dynasty. She tried to do the same thing as Nefertiti, and that is to stabilize the throne, keep the royal throne in the family, because again, you have at the end of the 12th dynasty no more male heirs. And she was the daughter. She's the legitimate daughter, royal family member of Amenemhet III, one of the most important kings. How do we know Sobek-neferu is a female ruler? Here's the evidence. During the literary age, where there's great literature that was being written, here, this is a seal. And the seal that you see here, both on the left and the right, it's just like if you have any other kind of bottle or any item that needs to be closed, there's always usually some kind of symbol or sign or writing on there. And that's what they also did here. You know, good thing about modern technology, I was able to take this seal and turn it right side up so you can take a look at it. Now notice the seal and the imagery here. This represents the symbols of kingship. So whenever you see this plant, the sage plant, it means the person is the ruler of upper or southern Egypt, or Kemet. And then on the right is what? This is a bee. And so this literally translates to mean he or she who belongs to the sage plant and the bee. Or in other words, the one who is ruling the south where the sage plant grows, and ruling the north where the bee is located. So this, when you see this, it represents kingship and rulership over the entire nation. Now this here, this oval symbol is the Shenu. The Shenu is the ring of eternity. And inside of the ring of eternity, you always have the name of the ruler. So this, and you might know it as the cartouche. Again, we know African name, Shenu, S-H-E-N-U. It's the ring of eternity. And in the name this is a crocodile, Sobek. This is Sobek, and then Neferu. Any that is in 3 is plural. So this is her name, Sobek-neferu. And then underneath, this is the Ankh and another symbol. This says, may she live. So in other words, the translation of this is that the king, or in this case, the queen, the female ruler of southern Egypt, northern Egypt, or Kemet, let's use the right term, the southern and northern Kemet, Sobek-neferu, may she live. Fundamental, unmistakable evidence of female rulership. And this is one of different seals that indicates her legitimate rulership, as you see there. And if you're curious, these are just inventory numbers on top that's been placed there by the museum. This is the University College in London. And now number 4, it's Queen Hatshepsut, the one that's more noted, that's more popular. Why is she more popular? Because her monuments endure. People have said, hey, you know what? Hatshepsut had a beard and she tried to imitate a man. She took an unprecedented position to become like men. Absolutely not. She is simply following in the tradition of her ancestors. Now you see this seated statue of Hatshepsut, which we'll mention in just a minute. But on the back of this seated statue are these Medu-neter glyphs, or so-called hieroglyphic glyphs. And look careful and accurate the writers were when they carved this up of her throne. These all represent images or symbols of kingship or leadership. But one thing you might make a note of, you see this symbol here, this symbol, this is a half a loaf of bread, and this is the same symbol here, is a half a loaf of bread. When you see this symbol, a half a loaf, and it is the representation of the feminine ending, or the female ending, just like you are aware that in Spanish, the feminine ending is what? And in classical Kemet, the feminine ending is a T. So this is a normal title, which says, this would say Necher, representing God or divine or anything that's holy. So this would say Nefer, Necher, or good God or great God. They're really referring to the king, but it doesn't actually say that. It says Nefer, Neferet, Necheret, or great, or it means, so it's not great or great God, it's really great goddess. And then you have the symbol here, which means ruler, female ruler of the 2 lands. That's the literal translation of this. It's so great God is just a title, and then ruler of the 2 lands, meaning upper and lower. And then notice her in the Shenu. This is Maat Ka-Ra, or truth is the spirit of Ra, or truth is the spirit of God. That's the literal translation of her name. And notice that the artists or the sculptors were very accurate in indicating the T. So this has nothing to do with her trying to become a man. It has to do with them showing her as a female ruler and indicating that in the writing. So Hatshepsut, won't go into details, but her father was Jemes or Thutmoses, and her mother Ames. And so Hatshepsut comes from the royal line. So she's a legitimate female ruler, and she had a daughter Neferu. So anyway, we won't go through the details of it, but anyway, she is a part of the royal family and legitimate ruler. So take a look at this. This is what I just showed you. Is she male or female? Clearly female. But yet when you read 90% of the propaganda, they say, oh, well, you know, Hatshepsut was a man. That's why she had to wear a beard. No, not at all. She simply is having to wear the uniform like everybody else. So if someone, for example, is a police officer, you don't see female police officers in heels and skirts. No, they have to wear the uniform like everybody else. So the beard is the fundamental symbol of authority. Now, brothers and sisters, I tell you this, in my travels and my field work, one of the things that has struck me is that we know that crowns, you know, that crowns really are a symbol of high authority. But I would argue that more than the crown, you'll see the beard as a symbol of authority, with elders, with chiefs, with kings, with high priests, and so forth. It's the beard. That's the more common symbol of high authority. So, but anyway, look at the body. She's represented as a female, and she is wearing a uniform like everybody else. So when you see images of her, here she's in the image of the Sphinx with a beard. This has nothing to do with her being a man. That's outsiders who are looking to impose their hatred and their propaganda against women. Because look, you know, most of us have been around to know that finish sentence that the oldest profession among women is what? They'll say prostitution. What? This has nothing to do with facts. No evidence of it in classical Africa. And Hatshepsut is not trying to imitate any man. She simply has a beard because it's part of the uniform. And then you see her name again. So why is she more well known? Because take a look at the beautiful temple. And this temple of Hatshepsut is called Djeser-Djeseru. It means the sacred of the most sacred, or the holy of holies. And there's actually 3 levels to this sacred temple. And this looks like a modern government building built about 3,500 years ago, 3 different levels. And these are kind of like ramps to get from one level to the next to the next. And this is one of the highlights. If anybody goes to KEMET or Egypt, they go to the Valley of the Kings, they go to the Valley of the Queens, but they must go to this great temple at Djeser-Djeseru. This is the temple, special temple of Hatshepsut. Here's another angle of the temple. Remember, 3 levels. That's 1 level here, and then you walk up the ramp. This is the 2nd level, and there's different scenes inside. And then there's many images of her. And notice the size of those statues of Hatshepsut and the people. And many of these have been stolen now. These statues are taken either to the Cairo Museum in Egypt, or they've been taken to the Metropolitan Museum in here in the States. So anyway, you see the image there. So everybody's got to go to the temple to pay homage and honor to one of the great rulers. And by the way, Hatshepsut ruled 20 years, 2 decades, no warfare. And then she later became the co-ruler with Thutmose III, but they were co-rulers. But she was a leader among equals because she was older than her younger stepbrother. And so anyway, these are images of her special temple. So why do we know more about her? Because how is someone going to cover up this evidence? Whereas the other rulers, there's not as much archaeological evidence that survives, so they get dismissed by one academic writer after another, after another, because they know the implications and to see the Africans literally were thousands of years ahead of where where modern cultures are, and women still lag behind. Not in classical Africa. You show me anywhere that they were so-called second class. You don't find it. You know, documentation beats conversation. People can debate, but there must be evidence to debate, and the evidence clearly indicates this kind of tradition. Now, inside of there's different scenes. Some of these have been damaged, so I have to show you the modern drawing. But she went to Punt. Here you see huge, massive, colossal ships that are being pulled by smaller ships. And you see the journey where they're actually coming back, when they actually go to Punt. Punt was the Holy Land. You all recall in In Genesis chapter, in Genesis, the book of Genesis there, that you have Punt. So Ham has sons, so Noah has his sons, and then Ham gives birth to to Kush, to Kemet, and Punt in Canaan. So Punt was what they call Holy Land or God's land, literally. So where's Punt? Does anybody remember where is this Holy Land of Punt? Because here in Kemet, we're talking here. So where would Punt be in relation to Kemet? Well, according to, okay, very good. So let's take a look. Here's Somalia, and here's the name Punt Land. Can there be any doubt? Absolutely not. It is called Punt Land today. This is Somalia, here's Punt Land. So for them, in the writings, and drawings, they consistently show Punt Land as the Holy Land, as God's land. It was a special place, and Hatshepsut took a great journey to the Holy Land, not for warfare, but for trade. For trade. These are images from Punt. So this is it's kind of faded a little bit, but this is ripples of water, if you can cut that out. And then you have stilts. Notice there's a stilt or stick or log here, another log here, in order to raise this small home. The home is raised from the ground because the water is right here. And notice that there's a ladder. You see the ladder? So people can go into the home. And here's a cow. So we know that Punt was right by the water. So let's go back. It kind of makes sense. Punt is right here on the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden is right here. Red Sea, Gulf of Aden. Here's Somalia. So Punt was the Holy Land, and the artist is very detailed. You can tell even the species of fish when this was colored in this original immaculate state. So Hatshepsut gives us a lot of details about Punt, about the people, the fish, about all the trading items that they brought back: gold, ivory, ebony, incense, frankincense, myrrh, all beautiful things they brought back from that she brought back from Punt. Lots of gold. Here's the Punt king and queen as they depict them in lots of gold here that's being shown. But these are images of Punt. We learn about the African lands by the images presented in the temple of Hatshepsut. And so lots of precious gifts you see here, all of the, ivory, so many things. And no warfare, no fighting took place, but they brought back in a peaceful trading expedition many beautiful, precious gifts from the Holy Land, from Punt. And also Hatshepsut was the one responsible for building major monuments like this here, this Tekken. Now her father, Thutmose the First, he had a Tekken or so-called obelisk built. This is 79 feet built and made out of granite, solid granite. So this is her father. So she outdid her father and had a monument made with 97 feet, estimated 320 tons. And here's another one that's fallen. And you know what? Actually, these two, now they're called Tekken. If there's one of these monuments, it's Tekken. But anytime you make something plural, you add the U. So Tekkenu. So Hatshepsut had these two Tekkenu put on huge ships. And her temple shows these two massive granite monuments that are being put in large barges and pulled by 30 or so smaller boats to, because these things obviously are very heavy, to be placed at this current location. Anyway, it's hard to cover any of this stuff, and that's again why we know about Hatshepsut and not the other female rulers. Finally, in terms of the female rulers, one is buried in the valley of the kings. These are numbers of what the tomb, how the tombs are numbered today. So Kings Valley tomb number 14, and they just call it KV 14, which is Kings Valley tomb number 14, and they're numbered in the order in which they were discovered by modern archaeologists. So when you go to the Valley of the Kings, you go on the tram, and these are tombs all around, and there could be some discovered in the future. I wouldn't doubt that at all. But nevertheless, Ta-Wozret is the fifth and final female ruler in the 19th dynasty. And this is her name in the Shinu, and it literally says Ta-Wozret. And she's making an offering here, and you see clearly if this is a female ruler, and this is a joint tomb of Ta-Wozret and Set-Nak of the 19th dynasty. This is a diagram of the tomb that you see on the left. These were people in one of my groups some years ago. One of the guides, you know what the guide is looking for? He's looking for bakshish. He's looking for a tip. I said, don't tip him. Well, he's talking about bakshish. How many bakshish? You already paid. When you paid for to come on the tour, you already paid. Everything's paid. You're doing nothing. Doesn't keep the gate open. Don't give him no bakshish. A la bakshish, no bakshish. Anyway, all right. So him again, Ta-Wozret, and then notice the symbols. You might notice this says ruler of the two lands. These lines represent Upper and Lower Kemet, but there's no doubt about her rulership. And then her name again, ruler of Upper and Lower Kemet, and her name is here. And here she's being mummified. And these jars represent the four vital organs in mummification: the liver, the lungs, the stomach, and intestines. Those were the critical organs that were preserved in these jars. So there's no question whatsoever that Ta-Wozret was a female ruler as well. And the reason why is the son was too young to rule. So she becomes the fifth of the five female rulers. So the evidence is pretty definitive. And so the status of women was quite high across the society. Let me end by showing you a couple other things. So we know about the Great Pyramids in Giza. Sometimes people overlook, however, they overlook the smaller pyramids. And by the way, these are people who have boxes. These are actually people. You say, I don't really see them. Yeah, I know, that's my point, how insignificant they are. So you have the major pyramids, that is the one by Khufu is equivalent to a 48-story skyscraper, 481 feet. And then Khafre, the one built for him, is 471 feet. This one is 218 feet. But notice I didn't say small, but smaller pyramids that are still massive. Notice these smaller pyramids for female family members and compared to people. These are still massive monuments. I just wanted to show you that. And you see a lot of harmony. Notice that when you have male and female, notice how she's holding her husband. This is Menkaure, who's the builder of that third large pyramid that you saw. But I want to just end by showing you a couple images of Kush as well. So now we're going further to the south of Egypt, and Kushites had a long tradition of female rulers, the Kendaki queens, female rulers, and the heartland of the Kushite Empire was right here in current-day Sudan, and we have a tremendous tradition. So Taharqa, we spoke about him before, but Taharqa is the greatest of all of the Kushite builders, the greatest builder in the history of ancient Kush, of the 25th dynasty. And we're told that Taharqa ruled the entire region from Sudan, Egypt, all the way in the northern area. But guess what? His mother, Queen Abar, had to officiate his installment as the queen mother. He's sent all the way from deep in the south to go and officiate at Mer-neith, or the great changer to Memphis. His installment would not be legitimate or proper without his mother being the queen mother who helps to officiate the ceremony. And so the powerful ruler, Mama, is the one in charge of that. And then finally, you have other Kushite rulers like Asfelta, as you see on the left, and An-Malani, their mother. They have the same mother, and her name is Nasausa. And I wanted to show you that they too had to be legitimized by the mother. And here it is. You have Asfelta, his coronation stela. Remember, this is the origin of the modern tombstone. It becomes more elaborate now. You have Mer-neith, was kind of simple, not anymore. This is quite some time later. Notice that you can't see it that well, but all of this is autobiographical. The talk of the life of Asfelta. Now you have images here. So what's happening here? You have the god Amun and Mut, his wife, and they are giving the crown to the king Asfelta. Notice he's kneeling in humility. He's receiving his crown, but guess what? Who is he receiving his crown in front of? His mother, the Salsa. She's holding two cisterns, two sacred items or emblems at a sacred ceremony where her son is being given the crown. And you notice that there is more focus on the mother than the father here. This is kind of a close-up here. This is, anyway, so this is Nasalsa as her son kneels down to receive his crown. And then you find a lot of these Kushite and even Nubian artifacts in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So here again, there's two statues I showed you. I Asfelta on the right, on Milani on the left, and then you have a queen. I mean, all this has been stolen, literally. Nobody gives up sacred monuments like this or artifacts. Even the coffin's been stolen. And so, and then here you have a student with a backpack and another lady taking notes here. But then nevertheless, the women have been front and central. So now I would say that with that overview, you all are official experts on the status of women and the gender balance that we find in classical Africa. All right, so thank you, and we will open it up now.
I got one question just to see if it harmonizes with you. When I was learning, when I took my languages, Hebrew, Greek, and then what we call hieroglyphics and et cetera, by my instructor, I was instructed that we say queen only because Europeans called their women queens, but that the African, the North African, once a pharaoh would just be a pharaoh, not queen pharaoh or she pharaoh, but pharaoh. And I was just curious if that was in harmony with what you understood.
I think that's a Greek word.
Oop, can't hear.
The real word in Kemet that is per-ah. You can't hear? No?
You're
Yeah, now I can. Now I can.
Okay. Okay. Well, the actual word pharaoh is a Greek word.
Yes.
It is per-ah, and per-ah means great house. That's
right.
The literal translation. Per means house, and ah means great. So great house. So you're right. So great house simply means, or you know, it's the and then if it's a female ruler, is the T is added. So it's just a female ruler. People say, but you know, it's more as a queen mother that really has the position. And sometimes if there's political chaos, the queen mother will be the one who will step up and stabilize the throne. So a lot of the terms and concepts clearly have a European bend and a European flavor, but for them, It's just one rulership. It's just one rulership. It's either male or female. It doesn't really function that much, other than the crown must stay in the female line. So hope I.
That's good.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so why don't we get a few questions answered here, Dr. Manu. We're gonna kind of rotate it. We got a few hands up, and then we have some in the chat box too. So let's, TK, why don't you ask your question, and then I'm gonna grab one from the chat box after that. Go ahead, TK.
All right, another fantastic educational presentation. Once again, you know, you never disappoint, but my question is, for the queens who became queens, did they teach the men and women, or the boys and girls, separately? Because it seems to me, if you're appointed or given the queenship, let's say, you already have to be at a certain level. They just can't drop you in like we dropped in Trump, just totally unqualified. To be queen and be successful, you already have to have a certain level of education, knowledge, sophistication, know how to deal with the whole kingdom. you know, or the whole queendom. So did they educate their women to a certain level? Was that just an automatic thing? Or did they know beforehand, she might be queen, we got to get her up to the level?
You know, as we said last week, that African that African royalty is groomed. They're not elected. They are always selected, and you see them being groomed at a very young age. For example, Hatshepsut's daughter, who's Neferu Ra, you see her literally being tutored on the lap by the architect Sin-in-Mut. So Sin-in-Mut is the architect, and he is the personal tutor of Hatshepsut's daughter. So here we have a male tutoring of the young princess in the ways of rulership. But then if we look at the text, a lot of Egyptologists, they really misrepresent. They call all the different wisdom and the literature, call it text. This is a wrong term to call it schoolboy text because they're giving lessons and instructions to their sons. However, the young girls were also taught the same literature, the same ethics, because writing was writing on and makeup applicators on. It's clearly that it was a literate society, both and female, and but details in the world about how the school system was set up. But what we can is that training on how to read and write, because you have books like the book of Untitled Chapter that you find the same copy up and down the country where they were teaching the same lessons. And so, you know, there certainly would have been apprenticeships, you know, men teaching boys, women teaching girls as well. But there's not a lot of specifics on what was done. All you can look at is just evidence here and evidence there about how the whole system operated. But you will never find a manual of how set up. You don't find that in terms of how they taught each other. You don't find that how the royal family tutored. You don't find the math. You don't find it in cooking. Is that do certain ingredients? You don't know the details. The same thing with the learning system is that we can only look at pieces of evidence here and there and try to figure out how the entire system worked. But clearly, focus on the throne and making sure that there was instructions for everybody in the family, without exception, male and female.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'm
okay.
just going
It's
to say I'm not
okay.
sure. Okay.
You're breaking up a little bit, but you know, when you come back in, yeah, we catch right up with you. So Kevin Blackburn had a question earlier, and it was about where's your question, Kevin? I'm trying to get to it.
So it was about the third image, the queen that was the keeper of the chronicles, if you will, or the library, and on the front of the block of the image with her, there were a set of hands about a third of the way up, and you didn't comment on the hands, and I was just curious as to what those additional pair of hands represented.
Let's see here. Can you all see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm at the end. Okay, let's go to that image and see if we could answer that question. All right, let's see. So you're talking about Seshet, so let's see.
It was, keep going up to the front. Nope.
This one?
No, it was farther up. Yes, that one. And the hands at the bottom. on her, what would appear to be her dress.
Talking about down here,
No, go to the previous image.
previous image. Oh, here. You talking about right here, right? Okay, this here,
Yes.
this is actually, yeah, this is a leopard skin outfit. So these are actually the claws of a leopard, but the
Yeah.
image is deteriorated, so you don't actually see it. If the painted image, you would actually see the black and yellow coat of a leopard, and then and these are the claws of a leopard. And so that's a keen observation. I didn't mention it on purpose, but you saw it, so we need to comment on it. And the thing about it is that anytime there's a leopard skin outfit, it can be worn by the most significant people, like a pharaoh, a priest, a priestess, or in this case, the goddess Seshet. And not anybody can wear a leopard skin outfit because, first of all, it is very difficult to track a leopard, very difficult. And even today, when I go to the region of southern Ethiopia in those areas, it is only the hero or a special person that can track and hunt a leopard. These people have the utmost respect for a leopard. And so when I showed them ancient images of a ritual with a leopard outfit done, but then I asked them, well, what is it? Why is it that you all only allow the most significant people in the country who are doing important for skin, and they give about the fundamental characteristics of a leopard. So that's what this is here. It's a leopard skin out. And matter of fact, a lot of times you don't see it here. Sometimes you would even see the tail coming here as an indication that it's a leopard. So that's a very good observation. So it's a part of the ritual that's performing. And by the way, the ritual here is called the Het-Heru, Hebsed, Het-Heru ritual. It's the Jubilee festival. It's the ruler who has to undergo spiritual and physical fitness, where he has to perform rituals. And this is the part of the Het-Heru festival that takes place. People thought they used to take place every 30 years. No, it's not necessarily every 30 years. It's whenever the spiritual energy begins to diminish. When the spiritual energy diminishes, then there must be a festival, because the king's energy, his spiritual energy, represents the whole spiritual energy of the entire nation. So it's whenever that spiritual energy diminishes, then there must be the festival and the ceremony. And that's what this represents here. So that's good observation there.
Okay, thank you very much again for a fantastic presentation. This is just
wonderful. Okay, so we have I'm going to ask a couple questions here from the chat, and I want to ask this question for Lonnie Wilson, and then a question for Dr. Carmen Ward Sullivan, and then I'm going to go to Marcus King after that. So Lonnie Wilson's questions, fantastic question. I am getting two different perspectives on the same question: matrilineal inheritance of female queenship versus women rulers in place only in the absence of a male. Which is it? If women rulers were actually considered of equal status, why wasn't the most qualified family member, regardless of gender, selected to rule? I'm glad I don't have to answer that. Go ahead.
Okay, there's two different things here. There's matrilineal, and there's matriarchy. There's two different things here. So there's no contradiction. So matrilineal means that the descent through the female line. And so you know exactly who the mother is. Father could be iffy sometimes, but mother is, you never know. But so they trace the throne and the lineage through so it's called matrilineal because it's the female line. And the females are in control of the throne. They're always in control of the throne. But the key is we can't assume or get caught up, well, why are the kings are the ones we see? That's the symbol of authority, but the source of the authority is always the women. They bestow the throne. This is why, as I mentioned before, the brother marriage. And one second woman, that's for conjugal purposes, to have children. It's a political marriage to stay in family, and you see that. That's exactly what you see. Whether people, however they may do it, that's how they set up the society, and that's why you have people marrying their sister. So it's tracing the lineage through the female line, but in terms of rulership, it's the males who are out there. Hey, let's face it, any kind of society, and I mentioned the small stature people before and their role. I mean, just think about the physiology, the physiognomy of male and females. You know, there's no question whatsoever that women are going to be better nurturers and caretakers. That's just the way it is. Whereas, you know, men have other roles. And I know it gets mixed up today because we're talking about 20th century America and all kind of confusion. You know, people don't know what they are these days. But nevertheless, in traditional Africa, they were very clear about it. So everybody had a defined role. And one thing about it is that the men are always out front, protecting. It doesn't mean that women also are not great leaders and warriors when it needs to be, but their makes sense. Provide, and the text says respect. She had her breast 3 years. You respect, so, but men have a different role. So when men are out there as political leaders, it doesn't mean women don't have the right. The women are the ones that control all of that. You always see it. In every case, you might have a king there, but guess what? He's never there by himself. He's there with his queen. And she's the one that's overlooking things. She has her hand on his shoulder, overlooking everything. You see it in every single case. So it's not really a contradiction in any way because it's matrilineal, meaning that they're going to trace it through the female line. But you do have males who are presented as the kings more often than not. But everybody has a particular role. Whereas today, it is confusion in this country as it always has been in Western society. Confusion between male folks also. So that's what we're is just chaos in society as opposed to clarity in Western, in African culture. So you just have to really see enough of the images and the culture to see how everything is laid out. I mean, think about it. Most of you are elders. When ever in Black tradition, even in this country, was an elder disrespected up until recent times? Never was an elder disrespected because all the roles were very clear. Even if that elder was not a blood relative, that elder was respected. When I grew up in the Fillmore district in San Francisco in the 60s, early 70s, guess what? Even the neighbors would chastise us. And if we were out of line, when mother and father got home, we got more of the same. You know, I didn't know that Uncle Choo Choo wasn't really a blood relative. I just knew he was Uncle Choo Choo or Aunt Gladys. But that's the role they played. We were clear about roles. Now, it's a thing that, don't be putting your hands on my child. All this other nonsense of Western individualism is clouded everything. But the roles were very clear up until more recently. And so that's why I think we have a lot more questions or confusion than we used to have in the past. So that's why when I go, and look, when I go to these villages and towns and come in as a guest, and it don't make any difference who children are. They have drink because it's usually hot sometimes. They make sure we have drink or whatever else we may need. They're the ones that go and make sure that we are comfortable as guests. And no one has to tell them. You don't have the parents yelling at them, telling, hey, I need you to do it. No, it's already known. Everyone. And so this is what I'm able to see in tradition. So that's, the men and women. Depends on the times. No one to a role that there's time for warfare. Women would throw down too if that's needed. But keep in mind, in a society, there's more women in a society that is produced by nature than men. That's just how it is. More females are the ones that produce life. So there's something that they're protecting there to make sure that life is perpetuated in these different institutions. So that's how I would answer that question. That's a good
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Carmen Ward Sullivan asked the question, what was the significance of the 41 burial chamber for Mer-neith?
Mer-neith, yeah. Question, because it's, but if you want the mainstream answer that has no evidence whatsoever, these people, if you read, and it's amazing how people will write something, have no evidence. You have people that would say those 41 burial chambers around Mer-neith's tomb in the first, these were quote unquote killed. They were supposedly murdered and buried around there. And you know what I asked? Based on what? You're supposed to be a scholar. Where's the evidence that anybody was killed and murdered? So it's not known why they did that, because the field work hasn't been done. What we're dealing with today is people speculating what was done 5,000 years ago. What I would say, the evidence of what that was, of what all were, is be clear. There's more field work done, because I have one aha moment after another. Actually, go out in the field and learn and actually watch current rituals and today. Talk with priests, learn from them, and elders and kings. It's always, not always, but usually a group of them, because they're able to, as a group, provide insight. So that's saying some open.
You're just breaking up. I can't understand anything you're saying. Bad connection or something.
Yeah, it's breaking up pretty good, Manu.
Do you have any other apps open on your computer right now?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I turned your video off, obviously, to try to help with that bandwidth problem, but get a little closer.
Yeah,
We know what it is.
I think
we have a good turn on as we have the other weeks. I think the problem is everybody has their videos on. That's an issue.
Well, if we could all turn our cameras off and just listen, that may help.
Well, let's try it.
Open up some bandwidth.
Yeah. No. Yeah, don't leave. Just turn the camera off. Don't leave.
Okay. All right. So let's go to Marcus King. Go ahead.
Can you turn my back on, Ron? Can you turn my camera on?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to ask you to go ahead. There you go. And then I think you have to hit it. There you are. Beautiful. Go for it. Marcus.
Okay. Yeah, that was great. So I had a question about the goddess Maat, and in parentheses, the word Karnak is next to it. What significance is that to the actual name Maat?
You know, one of the slides I had, Karnak. Karnak is simply the name of the temple that particular image of Maat comes from. So the Karnak temple is where I got the image of Maat, who was bringing in the foreigners who represented Isfet and chaos. So that's all it is. It's just the name of the temple.
Okay, I'm asking because if you guys are old school like I am, Johnny Carson used to play this character on his show called Karnak. And this character knew what was in the envelope before he even read it. And he would wear this headdress that seemed like it was very African. So I just want to know where they stole from, basically, in telling of these kind of characters and jokes.
Yeah, they stole it from the great Karnak. Well, as a matter of fact, the Karnak temple, I showed another image from the Karnak temple. If you recall, the two tekenu, or the obelisks of Hatshepsut,
yep.
Two large monuments are also the Karnak temple. So it's a huge temple, many acres, It's one of the most special temples, and we'll discuss that when we deal with architecture on during the 6th class session.
Okay.
on September the 3rd. Yes. And then somebody also somebody had mentioned in the chat, could they travel
Right.
to the Valley of the King? Yes, I mean, you can. I mean, given the travel bans now and travel restrictions, that might be an issue. But if you can get past the restrictions, period, they would love to see you in the Valley of the Kings, and it would be an experience that would be unusual because it's normally a very crowded place, but it wouldn't be that many people, and you would get a chance to go to one of the most important archaeological regions in the history of humanity and not have to fight crowds for a very good view. And so I would say that now's the time. I get messages from my colleagues saying, "Man, when you coming back? When you coming back?" I probably would have been there just even now, just coming back if it wasn't for the social lockdown. But I think that if you can get past any U.S. travel restrictions, you probably can go now.
Okay, so we got a question here for Patsy Lockhart, and then after that, I'm going to go to Reggie. Why is such a consistent effort to take away the royalty of a woman to make her man? Why did the hatred exist? What was the fear? That's Patsy Lockhart's question.
Well, the fear was not Africa. The fear was Europe. They just respect women. And so you see it in Greek society, you see it in Roman society. And so they just saw, look, let's put it this way. In Western society, the most valuable people was a young male warrior. You look at Germanic society, the Scythians, the Greeks, the Romans, it's the young male warrior who's the most valuable person. Why? Because they're the strongest, they're the fittest, and they're able to go out and fight. So anybody that was not a young male warrior, they were seen as less than. Children were less than, women were less than these people, and so were elders. So that's the legacy of Europe. And anybody can see that. You look at the height of Europe, you see this problem. The Greeks, Romans, Germans, you name it. It's the same issue. They just don't respect someone who's as they saw it, not as physically capable as them. And you see it in one writing after another after another. You don't find that in the African tradition. And if you do find anything like that, it's more recent. So this is not a problem. And any female who had stature that people typically know of in antiquity, they have something directly to do with Africa. People talk about Cleopatra, but Cleopatra was a ruler where? Not in Europe. She's a ruler in Egypt, or something like that. Or people might know Nefertiti's name. Where's that? It's also in the same place. It's in Kemet or Africa. But that's normally what we see is female with highness all the way around. That's what we see. There's no, and by the way, the foundation of this kind of harmonious relations, if we look at the small stature people today, the people who call themselves Ife, Mbuti, San, Khoi, I'm talking about the small stature people in East Africa, Southern Africa. If you look at their societies today, you can see today the role of women, and their societies have not changed very much at all. And yet you don't see any hierarchy at all, no hierarchy. And women and men play critical roles that are different, but they're both critical at the same time, and yet no hierarchy. And so that comes much later. So I think for me, it's looking at traditional African culture and society and gaining lessons about how we can reorient our relationships. Why should anybody try to catch up with the Europe relationships regarding men, women, and the exploitation of labor? All these monuments that we can see in Africa, guess what? Done without slave labor. Whereas this country is built with the enslavement and the exploitation of different. Same thing in Greek society, based on what? Slavery. Same thing in Roman society, based on what? Slavery. If any of you, speaking about travel, if any of you have gone to Rome and you've gone to the Colosseum, I mean, can you imagine a spectator sport to see blood and glory? Who does that? It's a very different conception of relationships and so forth. You don't see that in core Africa. Those are things that we really have to look very closely at and know that relationships and values have changed quite a bit in recent generations. And it doesn't simply go back to antiquity the same way. No, further we go back, there's a fundamentally different way of conceptualizing the society.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so we have obviously our time is up, but let's at least get a few more in, Professor, if we can. So
Yes.
Reggie, let's go to you first, and then I want to go to Willis because I think I missed Willis earlier. Willis, why you're right after Reggie Pate. So you go ahead, Reggie. Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself. Reggie, unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
In my African studies, I think I remember Hotep's son. I guess it was the 18th dynasty. He changed. He flipped the script. He went from many gods to one god, the Aten. And to Aten, and his name, I can't remember his name. It started with the A, but I know he was Hotep's son. And after he died, I mean, they dogged him out and they flipped the script back to many gods. Why wasn't it sustained? Why didn't it stay that way? Was it just?
Well, okay, I appreciate the question. Well, you're talking about Akhenaten, King Akhenaten of the 18th dynasty. So we look at 1300 or so BCE, and what he did, he changed the state religion from the name Amen to Aten, and he changed his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten, and so he changed the state religion, and so that it was a political move more than anything else. But Akhenaten really, even though they say that mainstream people say that it was many gods, he made it one, that did not change. There was always one creator. There's always one God, but there's many different powers and deities. So in Christianity, what would people call it? Angels. So angels have abilities and powers that regular men and women don't have. So what a Christian might call an angel is what in classical Africa is called a deity. But they believed in only one God. There's one. So whether that God was called Amen or Akhenaten changed it to Aten, or sometimes the God is called Ra, sometimes it's called Kunum. It simply depends on what region the people lived in. Just like the world today, people, you know, they have different names for God, and so that's how it was in KEMET. And in different regions, there was a different name for God, and it depends on what region the king came from. If the king came from the northern area, they would call, you know, the creator Ra. If from the middle part of the country, they would call him Amen. And then in the 18th dynasty, before Akhenaten, they combined Amen, the god Amen, and Ra to be a combined name, Amen Ra. But they only are looking at one source for humanity, one creator. But the name simply changes, and Akhenaten changed the name of Aten, and then after that, they changed it back to Amen. So that's what it was. He's not really changing it from worshiping many gods to one. That's the view that has distorted much of everything about African spiritual practice. He simply changed the name of the state religion when no one else in that royal family had done that. So, so that's what it is. So yeah, you have the Trinity, as you say, Red, but the other part of it is that it just depends on what region they came from. That's what they would call the name of God. But the most common name up and down the entire region is Amen or Amun, which means or unseen. Yes, sir.
Thank you for straightening that up for me.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Willis, you're up, my friend.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you know, I had put a question in the chat regarding Nefertiti, and I was thinking she was a queen, but you didn't mention that, and so if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it. But if you want to wait and do it in the chat, that's fine. My primary question is about the amalgamation of races In other words, with so much influx of Asians and Europeans trying to capture parts of Africa, they created these mixed races. And in Chancellor Williams' book, he refers to these mixed races as colors. So going to what is it? Hatshepsut?
Hatshepsut.
Yeah. Okay. So she's the daughter of Thutmose the First.
That was her father. Yes.
Okay. Was he Asian? I mean, was he mixed or was he pure African?
Pure African. Pure.
Okay. So
you see the images. Pure African.
Okay. So Williams further says that after Queen Hatshepsut reign, that it was followed by Thutmose III. And Thutmose III was so hated Queen Hatshepsut so much that he and his brother wiped the names off of all of what the queen had done with respects to the statues. Is that, I mean, so, you know, you've shown us a number of statues about with the queen, but we didn't really, I mean, I didn't see anything about the you know, what's written on it. And so, okay. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I appreciate it. This idea that Thutmose III, we're talking the 18th dynasty, destroyed all of the images of Queen Hatshepsut because she was not a legitimate. He destroyed all of. That is the mainstream propaganda that makes no sense. For example, I don't know how many of you had a chance around 2005. There was the Hatshepsut exhibit at the D. Young Museum in San Francisco. It was Hatshepsut from Queen Hatshepsut. And I took one group after another to that exhibit. And they had a big placard there as you entered the museum saying the same thing here, that Thutmose III destroyed all of Hatshepsut's image of her as a king or as a female. I got a group of 40-some people. I said, look how silly this sounds. They say that all of her images were destroyed, and look around, they got images of her as a king. You wouldn't have an exhibit if he her images. So
I'm not getting much of anything here. I don't know.
So here's the issue. If you go to that, all right, can you hear me now? Okay.
And my video is off.
Go to, all right.
I can't hear anybody.
You go to the Karnak temple. Here's one of the, yeah, it's probably a network. But if you all can hear me, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So here's the museum had an exhibit on Hatshepsut from Queen Neferu, which had all of her images of not queen, but as a female ruler, which goes against the idea he destroyed all of her images. Not only that, but you can go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and there's a whole section, a whole gallery on Hatshepsut as a female. And not only that, when I take people to the Karnak temple in Egypt, guess where I take them? I take them where no one else hardly ever goes, and I do the open.
Yeah, you're gone now.
Fundamentally.
Okay.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, we apologize.
Right,
We're having
Don't worry about it. I can't hear it. So, but anyway, I want to just let you know that I really enjoyed it, and thank you again for presenting today. I don't know if you heard me or not.
Okay, let me put this in the chat here. Can you hear me now at all?
I can.
Yeah, we can, but it goes in and out, Manu, when you get to a certain point. Then it just stops.
But we
Unfortunately,
did
we'll look at this
we
for
did get
next
the
time.
gist of it that the claim that Egyptologists are making is ridiculous, and that you showed three ways. You've been to the archaeological site, you've been to a couple of museums, and your argument is that if he destroyed all of the stuff, why look around you? All the stuff is still here. That's what I gathered from your statement.
Yeah, but
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My point is, my other point is that was Thutmose III, was he Asian or?
No, he was 100% African.
Why did he have such hatred for the Queen?
He didn't.
Oh, really?
He didn't. That's vicious Western racism and nonsense. That's the Western anti-female.
That's from Chancellor Williams. That's from Chancellor Williams' book on the destruction of Black civilization.
Yeah, well, Chancellor Williams is a great scholar who, guess what? He went and did the work in traditional African, he did the work among the African constitutional system to learn about the oral history. Chancellor Williams did not do work at archaeological sites. So what the great Chancellor Williams is doing is quoting the propagandists who are anti-female. What I've done is studied over a million artifacts, not only in museums, but I've gone to tons of archaeological sites. So if we had an opportunity now, I would show you images of Hatshepsut and Thutmose III together. And not only are they together doing rituals, guess who's leading the ritual? She is. So it makes no sense when the Westerners are talking about he destroyed her images, when you got all these images of her as a king. But not only that, there are specific rituals where Hatshepsut is leading. She's leading Thutmose III in important rituals. So even when they became co-rulers, then she is the leader among equals. So what I did, I think, overview of my my sound wasn't, but the has important details, tons of videos, just are literally untouched by Thutmose III. Mm-hmm. So even though people run that propaganda, there's no evidence to really back it up. That's why I say in the realm of serious research, documentation beats conversation. So I would love to debate anybody in the world who runs that kind of propaganda. And so you're right to quote Chancellor Williams, but that's why I say even great pioneers come up short on certain questions. So if he mentions that as a fact, as opposed to just stating that's what they say, then it's a wrong disposition altogether, because the evidence doesn't support a attack. And now let me say this. There are many people who are left out of the chronology. You know who's left out of the chronology? Like I showed you the Turin papyrus. There's the Turin papyrus. There's different lists. There's the Turin list. There's the Saqqara list, and in all these lists, somebody's left out. And you know who's left out a lot of these? King Tutankhamun. King Tut is left off of some of those. So what you have is not some hatred of women. You have some people after the fact who are disputing what line of the family is in control. And so you find people left. There's always somebody left out of a list. Always. You got at least five lists minimal, and someone's left out. And so these people try to pick out Hatshepsut because they got an agenda. You know what the agenda is? If Europe lagged behind in terms of female having respect for women, then they project that must have been the case for everybody. So therefore, they want to try to impose their negative view of female rulership on Africa. And guess what? The problem is I'm around and I want to hear that Hatshepsut was quite legitimate, as you can see from all those monuments that I showed, and making up excuses later. But most of the third certainly did not have an issue with her as a female ruler, because he would never have allowed her to be the leader in rituals and ceremonies when he is clearly the one being tutored and he's following behind her. That's the one image he would have destroyed if she's not legitimate.
What about Nefertiti?
Wait a minute. Stop. I want to get Chanel's question asked before we end this, because we're at the end here. Chanel put in the chat box, Professor, what's your take on Black women referring themselves as kings today? And then after that, we're going to end, and then you guys can stay on and ask more if the doctor wants to, professor wants to stay on. So what's your take on referring Black women referring themselves as kings today? I'm glad I'm not answering that either, but go ahead.
In Queens,
where is Chanel? Did Chanel leave?
There's an agenda behind that one.
I think I lost Chanel. Let's see. She's not here.
Can we move on?
If they say it, okay. Yeah, but let me just say this, is that I know that a lot of people say that we're descendants of kings and queens. That's true, but to me, that don't mean a whole lot, because there's kings and queens in other countries who were slave owners, imperialists, and people with bad values. So kingship and queenship in itself is not of great value. And besides, not everybody can be a king and queen. What about the workers? What about the farmers? What about those craftsmen? What about the teachers? So everybody's not always a king and queen, but you know, if they want to claim that. I know a lot of their queens. If that's the case, queenship and not just give a title. And many of them will claiming that they don't represent that kind of high level, and even some brothers in some cases. So if people want to be king and queen, then act like somebody in the royal family. Carry yourself with great character. Besides, it's not with being a regular worker who also is great at that task as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so look, let's pray ourselves out.
Yeah.
And Professor, we really appreciate it and everything. So who would like to pray us out today?
I wouldn't mind doing that. Elliot.
Please go ahead, Elliot. Turn on your video too.
Oh, okay.
There you are.
All right.
I see that good looking face. Go ahead, Elliot.
Again, we have come as a band of brothers and sisters on this evening, and thank you for the professor. It just allows us to have a whole series of other information and input into our dialogue. We thank you for that. We ask that you would continue to bless our leader, also bless the brothers to brothers, and then all those connected to those, the sisters that are on here tonight, that we have a great field of information in that stereotype called the dark continent that has been blocked. But it doesn't mean it's not there. Truth, foundation, morality, right and wrong, and a creator God. These are the fibers that are of our classical African heritage. Let us never forget it. And we thank you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen Ra.
Fantastic. You all can unmute yourself and have a conversation, but we